Hello and welcome back to the Real Estate School podcast. My name is Michael Montgomery. I'm your host, and today we'll be interviewing Jenelle Tremblett. Now, Janelle's a very exciting guest. She is also a podcast host for the podcast Ebb and Glow, which is a fantastic podcast, but she's also a real estate agent in Toronto, Canada. And the amazing thing about Jenelle is she has started this business with the whole concept of how can I be fulfilled in my career? She comes from a background where fulfillment was not actually created in her previous career. So she's really been trying to build this business in a way that she wants. So she really values simplicity and connecting with others. As well, you'll learn on the show that she has an interest in building her business in such a way that she can travel quite a bit, which I know in real estate is something that we all would love to do. So we're going to learn a lot about that in today's episode. Enjoy this episode with Jenelle Tremblett. Hello and welcome back to Real Estate School. We are joined here today by Jenelle. How are you doing today, Jenelle?
I'm so excited to be here. It's nice being on this side for once.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to talk about that. But Jenelle is a fellow podcaster with a really popular podcast, which we're going to discuss today. But we're really excited to have her on, mainly because she's a relatively new real estate agent that has scaled her business in a very impressive manner. And the other thing that I really like about Jenelle's story is also where she's trying to take her business. Where a lot of us sometimes we get into real estate and we don't really have an end game, where I feel like you have really thought through your end game and you're building your business in that direction as well. But before we jump into that, Jenelle, I first want to hear what happened with your deal yesterday. You were working on a big deal. There was a number of offers. So let's first hear about how that all went and then let's jump in.
Oh, I love this story. Let's just say yesterday was one of the happiest moments of my career so far. And so I'm in year 3 of real estate. I worked in corporate sales and startup marketing before that, a little mix of both. I did a business degree prior to that. So anyway, so this client I've been working with, my first email to this client was January 2022. So essentially 15 months. I joked with one of my coworkers the other day. I said, I could have had almost 2 babies in this time. The time I've been working with these clients.
And I'm curious then, when you sent that email, has there been back and forth? Have you been working with them pretty consistently since then?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so
Yeah.
I'm guessing, I'll let you finish the story, but I think I know where it's going, hopefully anyways.
Yeah, so we have had a whirlwind, and any real estate agent that's listening to this, you've had clients where you've questioned, have I put too much into this? Then it's ever going to be worth. You know what I mean? But you're so far into it and you love working with this client that you're very excited for them to eventually get a place. So last night we were one of 21 offers.
One of 21, which I mean, it's still happening, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
even with rising interest rates, we're still seeing properties that are priced like that end up generating this number of offers. And I take it you won.
We did win. So we viewed the property at 1:30 p.m. yesterday. The offer date was at 4 p.m. Offers had to be at 4 p.m.
Wow.
And so that was Monday night. And that previous Saturday, I was out with them on another Saturday, bunch of showings. And we looked at that listing just online. And I said to them, like, we've looked at that style house so many times. Like, you're not going to like it. Like, we don't need to add that one in. Like, let's look at these other properties instead. After we were done our showings, one of the women just popped by the open house because she was in the area. And she messaged me and said, I really like it. Like, I think we should go check it out. And so then we checked it out. We were talking about it Monday morning, and she's like, let's just go check it out. It might not even be what we're looking for, and it might be too late. Like, it sounds like we have 2 hours to put this together, but let's just go take a look. Since, like, you have time, let's go. So we went, and I walked in, and the one woman that I knew loved it. We were just kind of waiting for the other woman, and what we were struggling with the most was in Toronto, the row houses are very narrow. It's hard to get width in the row houses, and what also doesn't come with that is natural light. And so I swear to God, every row house across downtown and Leslieville and the West End in the past 8 to 9 months. And anyways, we walked in, we sat in the living room for a bit. As you know, any agent listening to this, you've got to sit in the living room and feel it out. And we went upstairs, and then the other woman looked at me, and she just said, I like this house. And that's when I knew. I said, we got to get this. And it was a struggle. I mean, our first offer, we weren't even in the top. We went in high, and out of 21 offers, we were somewhere in the middle. And the listing agent came back to me and just said, you're kind of somewhere in the middle. If you want to improve, come back. So we improved, managed to get ourselves to top 3. And then it was down to us and another one. And I basically said, like, I feel like we're overpaying. But if we don't pay for this house, that's the new comp in the neighborhood. So we're going to pay it on the next house. And I know how much my clients love this house. Anyways, our next offer, we went in at our absolute highest number. My client said, if they bid 1,000 over, we're not doing it. Like, that is literally our max. Like, we'll walk away over $1,000. And you know what it's like talking to the listing agents, and we made it work. So it was ours.
That's amazing. There's so many great takeaways there. And I usually say this with clients too, is you want to write that number where you can sleep at night either way. So if somebody was to write $5,000 more and you'd lose it, you can sleep at night because ultimately you know that this is how high you're willing to go with it. But conversely, if you write the offer and get it, you want to be able to sleep at night too, in the sense that you're not worrying that you're overpaying. But I find overpaying to be such a tricky one. And I usually bring it back to a story of me when I bought my current house that I'm in right now. And it's on paper, my wife and I wildly overpaid. So when we look at comps, like we didn't make sense of, we were in competing offers too, and we wildly overpaid compared to what the market would probably bear. But we couldn't have been happier that we got this home. Like, we're willing to overpay for it because this home checked off our very select criteria, basically. So oftentimes I will tell that story to buyers where, like, my assessment brings us here, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're willing to pay this. You might be willing to pay more because you see more value in the area, the location, the upgrades, things like that. But that's fantastic. They must have been ecstatic.
Well, tell me what you think about this. 2 months prior, February was only our second time. We only put 3 offers in total over the course of my time working with them. 3 offers. Last night was our 3rd offer, and we went. Obviously, we won that one. The offer we put in 2 months ago, I swear to God, I thought it was their dream home. And long story short, it was ours. All I needed was that one final signature, and then I was going to their house and pick up the check. And within 3 minutes, my clients got cold feet and pulled out.
Yeah,
they felt like they were stretching themselves too thin, money wise, and they got really overwhelmed and anxious. And mind you, that was still like over a year of working with them. And at that point, I was so defeated. And I was like, it's there. Like, you had it. And I ended up needing to take a couple weeks break just from like on both sides. We all just needed a breather because we literally had an accepted offer and you walked away from it. And then the next person got it. You asked previous to this episode, like, oh, like, what's a huge mistake within your career? Well, that could have been if I reacted in a bad way or didn't take that breather or got rid of that client just because of my ego, that would have been a big mistake. But yet I took a step back and I was like, I love working with these people. I want to find them a home. And 2 months later, we got it.
So walk me through those couple of weeks, because I think that that's an important step that you took. Oftentimes, like you're saying, when we get to this point as agents, we feel defeated. We feel like, are these people ever going to buy? We get down on them. We almost are critical of our clients when this is a very emotional and challenging process for them. In many ways, we have to be as empathetic as possible, but that doesn't mean that that's always easy for us to actually achieve that. So did you have a conversation with them saying, I think we should just take a couple of weeks here to just relax and kind of start again at that point in time?
I think one of the biggest strengths of a real estate agent in these businesses, especially some of the biggest cities that we're in, is being able to not react. Out of everyone within this transaction, you have to be the most calm person. You cannot react. You need to have so much patience, and you got to stay under control the whole time. If you're reacting all the time and getting upset and getting emotional, you're never going to survive in this business. That's probably one of the most times I've ever been defeated in my life, and I refuse to let it show. I made it still known. I just said, yeah, like, I'm disappointed overall as well, but ultimately we had to take a couple of weeks and understand, why were we overwhelmed by this? We were there. And one of the biggest conversations I had with them, I said, this was a really smooth process. You got to understand, are you overwhelmed because we were stretching ourselves too thin money-wise? Or are you overwhelmed by the process of almost being in a little bit of a bidding war? Me calling you saying, do you want to go higher? Then me calling you 10 minutes later and saying, okay, we're almost there. Do we want to change anything? And I said, because if that's the part that's overwhelming, that's only going to get worse. We were one of like 3 or 4 offers. I said, if you want to really buy a house in Toronto, you got to be ready for being part of 20 offers and it being very competitive. And I said, if you don't have an appetite for that, we got to rethink everything. And so I gave them a couple weeks and I just said, let's chill for a bit and we'll come back and then we'll understand exactly what we're looking for.
That's fantastic. That's such a mature thing to say, Jenelle, for a third-year agent. That's a really impressive stance to take. And it's true. Sometimes a lot of this is expectations in many ways, right? Like, and it's a process for a buyer too, where they're learning how this is going as they're submitting offers, losing. Sometimes we get defeated after the first offer, but that's like part of the learning process in
Yeah.
many ways. And I really like how you shed some light on this fact that let's understand that this part of feeling pressured in a multiple offer situation is just what we're going to have to become comfortable with. If it's financial and you're like, this number, I'm paying 1.3 for this and this feels uncomfortable for me, that's a different story because that's something that can be rectified. But actually rectifying a multiple offer situation in a competitive market is impossible.
Well, once we realize that, okay, no, this is the price that really made us uncomfortable, and there's some changes within jobs that we have some like parts that we're unsure about, so we don't want to take that risk. I said, no problem. But we have to rethink our criteria. You want the home that's in that price range. If you don't want to be in that price range, we have to let go of some things. We have to come back to 300 less.
Yeah.
And we have to reevaluate your whole criteria and maybe look at some different neighborhoods.
Good for you. That's such a great story. And they're going to be so happy in that house too. They're going to think back to that process. They're going to be so happy. That's fantastic. So I'm curious here, Jenelle, you said your initial email to them was 15 months ago or so. Where did that client come from? And then from there, we'll kind of start to get into how you've built your business so far. But I'm curious specifically, where did this client come from?
So that client was a brokerage lead. So I ended up joining a brokerage that was a lead generating brokerage. And the reason why I did that, so at the time I got into real estate, I was already living in Toronto for 3.5 years. And while I worked at multiple jobs, I had a big network. You do not build a real estate business on friends and family. If you have that outlook, you're going to be very, very disappointed, which I can tell many stories about. It's always your closest friends that don't ever want to trust you. It's always the random strangers that are going to trust you with their biggest purchase. And anyways, so I joined a lead generating brokerage. So my first year, I really leaned on like taking leads from the brokerage and building a client base around that. And that has since grown since that. A lot of my business right now is referral, a big, big portion. I looked at, for the deals I've closed so far in 2023, 35% of my business is referral right now.
Great. That's impressive for a third year. And it's true. I mean, the friends and family thing, it's interesting because a lot of times there's two things I find. First off, friends see us as friends. Like sometimes I've had friends that look to me and they're like, oh, Mike, what do you do again? I'm like, I've been selling real estate for years. Like you don't know that, but it's because they see me as a friend, which is surprising because I can't believe somebody sees me as a friend. But anyways, they see you as a friend. They don't necessarily see you as an agent. To be honest, I've lost friendships. I have lost close friendships over deals that have gone south. And I'm guessing most agents have a story like that. And part of me doesn't even care for dealing with close friends and family because of that. But I find the acquaintances to be so strong, right? The referrals, the friends of friends, those can always be really, really good people. But generally speaking, family and friends, if we just focus purely on like a really close, tight knit, like closest circle, that doesn't tend to always be the best.
Yeah. I've lost really close friends.
Yeah.
Due to working in this business.
Yeah.
No regrets. It hurts your ego at first for sure because you just expect your friends to support you. But I mean, I think that's a thing of growing up too. It's not going to be your closest people around you that's going to support you and everything. Totally.
And that's part of the industry, right? Like this job isn't easy emotionally. This job is, it's not easy emotionally. It's not for everybody emotionally. And so part of what we're getting paid for is having to deal with that. But that's fantastic that you've been able in year 3 to start generating referrals like that. So what would you credit or what's the strategy that you're using in order to generate these referrals?
Asking for them.
You're asking for them directly?
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I do is I always ask for a Google review from every client. Now, I don't pressure them. I'll ask them once. I don't pressure them like, oh, where's that Google review? I don't ask them for that. And then as I'm closing the deal or when we're closing the deal or they're moving in or whatever, I always say, if you know anyone renting, buying, or selling, I would love for you to recommend me.
Perfect.
Simple.
Yeah.
Simple.
And so just to get a little bit more specific, how are you asking for the Google review? Is it done by email, text, phone? How are you doing that? And what's kind of the messaging that you use?
After the deal is accepted, whether you're a buyer, a renter, an owner, a seller, anything, that next steps email, the first one I always send is, it's a mixed email of this is how to do the deposit and also here's the link to do the Google review. And I just say, if you've been happy with my services so far, I would love it if you left a Google review at this link. These really help me grow my business.
And so you're doing that pre-closing then basically, right? Like once the
Yeah,
deal
once the
has been
deposit is about to
signed
be done.
and the
Yeah.
deal's firm, that's when you end up asking for it
Hmm.
prior to them actually taking possession.
Yeah.
Do you find that's more effective than doing it post-closing? Are they really busy post-closing, things like that? Or their
That's the only
excitement
way
level's
I've ever
high?
done it. Yeah, I've always just like that first email that I send of like a kind of a next steps email, I just put it in there because when they're going back, getting ready to close, they're following the steps. Okay, step 1, let's do a Google review. Step 2, let's get the mortgage broker on the phone. Step 3, let's find a lawyer, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. Yeah, I actually tend to really like that time too because that's when I find their excitement level is really high. Not that it's
Mhm.
not high when they get the keys, but they're so
Mhm.
busy, right? Like they're moving
They're
in, there's all sorts of things on
stressed,
the
is
go.
what they are.
Yeah, and it's not that they don't want to give a Google review. They just have so many things on their mind, and our Google review is top of our mind, but for them not so much. That doesn't mean they didn't have a good experience though.
No, and I always find it so funny. I mentioned to a client because we were just texting. I was like, "Oh, if you didn't get a chance, like, make sure to do that Google review." And she was like, "Trust me, it's on my mind. I want to do it." And I said, "Don't worry. There is a taxi driver in Greece from summer 2021 that I still think I should have done a Google review. That I keep have in the back of my mind that I want to. I've had a fantastic experience, but I just never got around to
Never
doing
got
it."
around to it.
Yeah.
I like that. I do that too. I try to inject a little bit of humor into that because it just kind of softens the whole approach. But yeah,
Yeah.
good for you. Good for you. And then from there you're asking for the referral as well. And
Always.
that's worked.
And I always ask for a lot of referrals from people that I don't end up doing a deal with.
Mm.
So say if this happens a lot with renters where maybe they change their criteria or maybe like they're like, "Oh, I'm just like not going to move again. Oh, something's happening within my family." But I had enough of a conversation with them that I built enough rapport. Maybe I went in for one showing or maybe we had a really good conversation on the phone. And I just say, "No problem at all. If you know anyone again, moving or buying, I would love for you to recommend me."
I love that approach because in a sense, and not to like pressure them by any means, but sometimes, especially if you've been out showing homes, they'll feel
Mhm.
somewhat like indebted to you. And sometimes I've had clients like send me gift cards and things like that, or they say,
I
"Can I
just
pay
want
you
a
for your time?"
referral.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm always like, no, there's like zero compensation. The only request I'd have is if you know anybody looking to buy or sell, I would love an introduction. And that's enough basically, because of course we don't need to be compensated for showing 3 homes, right?
I always say if wherever you get your hair done, you only know one hairdresser. You don't know 5 hairdressers that you're going to recommend to someone. So if someone has a good experience with you as a real estate agent, they are always going to recommend you.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and that I think the experience side is really key too.
Mhm.
Now, the other thing that you've done really, really well is you've grown your social media presence and brand. So, can you walk me through some of the thinking that you had and the strategizing that you did when you thought about how you were going to grow this business on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I was doing in the beginning to really build my business was a lot of emailing, like following up. I'd send an email. I'd even link to like my website and stuff. And I thought to myself, like, they have no idea who the hell I am. And I was recognizing within my business that I can have a text conversation or an email or a quick phone conversation, but it seems to be after that first showing where they really commit to me. They really get a sense for who I am. I'm able to build trust. And what I learned from that experience is people really start to trust me and want to work with me when they know a little bit more who I am, when they hear my voice a bit more, when they see me a bit more. And I thought to myself, I have a marketing degree and I'm not even using it. Like I know how to do this. And even back in the day, I was thinking about adding video to emails just to put a face to a name because there's probably 10 real estate agents emailing this person and everyone's going to be emailing the same things. There's only so many things you can write where saying, "Hey, do you want to see this home? Do you want me to set you up on listing alerts?" Like we're all going to do the same things, but what makes you stand out more from the next person? So I gave myself a goal starting August 1st of last year, and I said, post to TikTok every single day for the next 6 months, and let's see what happens. And that 6 months went very quickly, and so that was August, and today is mid-April. I've posted every single day since August 1st of last year.
On TikTok specifically.
Just TikTok. Yep. And so from a marketing strategy, from a background of marketing, what you don't want to do is do 5 channels and half-ass them all. You're better off picking one channel and doing it like really, really, really well. And for me, I wanted to use TikTok as a user for months, so I really understood how this platform operates before I started posting. So the amount of scrolling I did from like April to August was absolutely ridiculous. But by the time I started posting, I knew what went viral, what makes people want to comment, like what kind of text do I want to use, like what strategies do I want to use. And now, mind you, I have not had viral growth by any means, but it's definitely consistent growth, which is what I care about.
That's amazing. And the one thought that's coming into my mind is I'd love to do that. I'm sure a lot of agents would, but how do you find the time, the creativity, and the time, I guess, for editing them as well? So maybe let's start with like the creativity side. How are you coming up with creative TikToks from the start? And then how are you finding time for the editing side?
So one of the keys to any content creation is pick one day to do it. You don't want to be waking up every single morning and be like, oh, shit, I don't have a video ready. Like, I got to record one right now. No. Now, I don't do this perfectly every week, but what I try to do is do all of my content creation on Mondays. I find for me and my business, Mondays is like my slowest day of the week. I do a lot of my podcasting on Mondays. I do a lot of my content creation. And the way I did a strategy is I said, okay, I just want to do video tours of places, and then every other second video, do a video of me showing my face for people to get to know me. Coming up with content ideas, I started a lot with just like, this is my favorite building, or this is what I think about this building. I didn't really overthink it, to be honest. I just like, what am I thinking about this week? What are my experiences? One of my videos that went viral recently was I was telling a story about a client getting a crazy rent increase. And I think that one's close to 60,000 views already. And it's literally just me like leaning over on my kitchen island and just like talking like as if I was on FaceTime. Yep. I don't overthink the strategies at all. On TikTok, the least edited videos do the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I find with mine too. And I think a lot of times we like try to compare ourselves to, Mr. Beast that has like 16 jump cuts within 5 seconds of this first video. It's just like, that's another level. Like we don't need to be thinking like that. With the biggest blocker for a lot of us is just the general consistency. And I love this strategy of just blocking off one day to do content creation and batch it. I do the same thing. It's just so much easier on us.
You just gotta think. The other thing that really got me to do a lot of the TikTok videos is a big portion of my clientele is all virtual. They're moving from other cities. They're moving from Montreal, Halifax, Vancouver, and I'm doing everything virtually. So I'm literally just going to view the property, taking a video of it, and giving it to them. And then I thought to myself, I have all of these videos of all of these places, and what am I going to do with these videos? So I just started posting them. And now, mind you, they're vacant, so I would never post a video if it was like a tenanted unit or like the owner like didn't want any videos taken. And I just started actually using those videos. So to me, I was already doing the work. I wasn't adding more to my plate. I was already going to view a bunch of buildings for a client, and then I just started posting them with my opinions on it. And I think what a lot of people have liked so far is I'm very honest. I'll say, I don't really like this, and I'm not afraid to say it. And I've had people comment on the videos like, oh, like, how does the other agent feel that you're like basically crapping on their listing? I'm saying the exact same thing that I would say to my client within the showing or to the listing agent if they ask for feedback. I'm not saying anything mean or rude or derogatory at all. I'm just pointing at the pros and cons, which is literally all we get taught when we get licensed.
It's true. And I think that like we also do have to have a perspective. If you don't have a perspective, and sometimes it doesn't have to be like super edgy. You don't have to be walking through there bashing every single home that you look at and, saying how awful everything is. But I think if you have an open perspective, it creates more trust between you and then the viewer ultimately, because you're being honest with how you're thinking through it. So on that note, I want to get into your podcast because your podcast is super interesting. But right before we jump into that, you have this life plan in many ways. And when you started in this industry 3 years ago, you kind of had a start and somewhat, maybe you'll shine more light on this, an exit plan in a sense, and where you want to go with this business. So can you walk us through what you want to do here and where do you want to end up when it comes to real estate, and how are you setting up your business as such?
A lot of people ask me why I got into real estate, and one of the biggest reasons for me is I feel that it's one of the very few careers that women are able to have it all. You're able to be a business owner and also raise a family and be able to have the time and flexibility to do both. Working in the corporate world prior to that, I'd get 2 to 3 weeks vacation. My family doesn't live in Toronto, so at least 2 weeks of that would be spent going to visit family. And then I'd have a week left. That was my entire life. I couldn't subscribe to it any longer. I was miserable. I got into the business really just because I was money hungry. Like, I knew how ambitious I was. I knew I didn't need someone else to hold me accountable. I knew I could do it. And I saw the money pretty quickly. And I mean, it's a high. It's a high when you're closing deals. Anyway, so a long-term plan. I'm 3 years into this business, and now I'm really starting to think of my next step. I'm not married. I don't have kids. So the only thing keeping me in Toronto right now is this career. Where I'd like to be in other countries selling real estate. I'd like to be in Latin America. I'd like to be flying back and forth from Europe and maybe selling real estate to people in Canada who want to buy a second home in, say, Latin America or Europe. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I want to build towards that. So for me, I'm thinking, okay, do I have to be part of like more of an international brokerage, or do I just go out my own? I don't know yet. But that's the ultimate goal, is to maybe have a home base in Toronto, but be a little bit more like location flexible.
And so would the concept be then transacting in Toronto as well as another sunny, beautiful spot on the ocean sort of thing?
Yeah, like right now I'm studying Spanish. Like, I'm learning it 2 to 3 times a week, studying it on my own. And my goal is to be at least conversational by the end of this year. And then hopefully that could open up doors to eventually sell real estate in other countries. The way I see it, you can have all of these big goals. You can have this huge goal that you want to do in 5 years, but are you preparing yourself for when that opportunity comes up? So yeah, maybe I can manifest that opportunity, but 5 years from now, if that opportunity presents itself to me, am I even ready for it? Do I know the language? Have I traveled there? Do I know anything about these countries? I can do that while working up to eventually achieving that goal. So that's what I want to do with that.
And I know agents that do this, and they're quite successful. It's tough for them to be like the main top producer in a given city if they're partially somewhere else, but that's not their goal. Their goal is to do a good amount of transactions in their main city. And then they're also licensed in other areas where they go, and they also do a good number of transactions. When they're away, they also have somebody who's like looking after their business at their home base and vice versa. And yeah, are you going to give up a few deals on both sides? Yes. But that trade-off you're making is an amazing lifestyle trade-off. And ultimately, you can still, there's people that are going to move from Toronto to certain parts in Latin America. And I think even like the more you build your agent base too, they'll be referring people in. So I think that's great. I think that's not something that enough of us think about, is like, what's really the next step here with this career? I think that's a really good thought for us to start pondering on.
It's so funny. It's funny being a real estate agent and still being a renter, but I don't know if I have plans to plant roots here. My family isn't from here. I always say if I'm going to really plant roots somewhere, it has to be on an ocean. And I mean,
that's fair. That's totally fair.
I look at a lake and I'm like, but I'm from the East Coast. Like, I'm from ocean, and it's like, sure, Lake Ontario, but no offense, Toronto and Ontario, but it's nothing.
I've heard this too, where I don't think you have to be a homeowner to be a real estate agent. Like, the nature of home ownership is that you have a big asset and you have a lot of your money tied up. So if you are interested in moving, it doesn't make a ton of sense. And I don't think at all you need to actually own real estate, and especially like owning real estate in Toronto is going to take a big chunk of change out of one's savings, just given the prices there.
And my parents aren't helping.
Yeah,
so.
There you go. Exactly. So take us into the podcast now, Jenelle. Maybe walk us through the podcast and the thought behind starting it.
I've always been a very curious person. I've been well known to be that person where someone meets me and they think, why did I just tell you all of that? Like, how did you get that out of me? Like, why did I feel so comfortable telling you that? And I've always been the person that wants to know a lot about someone, genuinely. I started the podcast in October 2020, and I always kind of felt social media was people always showing you the highlight reel. And I don't get affected by it, but I have a lot of friends that really get affected by the comparison game. I can see right through it. Prior to real estate, I worked in influencer marketing, so it's like I really can see through it. I was having a lot of really good, deep conversations with the people around me, and sometimes I just felt that some of them needed to be recorded.
Fair.
And people never talk about the stuff they go through until they're really on the other side of it. No one really talks about it when they're going through it. And sometimes people think their traumas or their setbacks aren't that big. Oh, I didn't have a death in my family. I just got laid off on my job. It's not that big of a deal. Well, it's a big deal to you. I want to hear your perspective on it. And so essentially the goal was to just start having conversations with people just about real life stuff. And with the ultimate goal to like, no matter what you're going through today, I can guarantee you someone else has gone through it and are already on the other side of it. Since then, this week was episode 130,
Wow.
I think. Ultimately, I just let my curiosity take me to what conversations I want to have.
That's amazing. And so it wasn't necessarily a real estate play then per se. It was out of curiosity and wanting to do this on the side.
No, I live a double life.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with real estate at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and the podcast, just so everybody knows, we probably should mention it, is Ebb and Glow. It will definitely be in the show notes, so you can go to it. Highly recommend checking it out because there are some really good conversations you're having. Are there any learnings or takeaways that you've been able to garner just over the course of the last couple of years in doing this?
I love having something outside of real estate. It is something to have a reason to turn it off. Like I said, I'm not married. I don't have kids. I don't have a pet. So if I allowed myself, I could work until midnight every single night. But it's nice having something where it's like, okay, real estate needs to get turned off. I have other responsibilities. I have other interests. And also it's been really nice to just have something to talk about with clients.
Absolutely. I think it makes us more interesting as human beings, right? Like we're able to kind of lean on other people's experiences. And I'm guessing clients are also quite interested. I'm sure you have a ton of clients that listen to it as well.
I find it's nice to have something to talk about with clients other than, oh, do you like this house?
Yeah, totally. But I think you're touching on a really important part here, Jenelle. And this is something that I found and I learned it the hard way. It sounds like you may have learned it more of the easy way, but maybe it wasn't the easy way that you've learned this. So I'd be curious to know. But the hard learning, I guess, that I had was going through a number of phases of burnout. And literally not, and my wife, she looked at me one day and she's like, you don't do anything except for sell real estate and work on growing your real estate business. And I said, yeah, but that's fine. You know, I'm young enough, no kids, don't worry about it. That's totally fine. But that doesn't matter. You don't necessarily need to have kids, and if you're young enough, you'll still end up burning out. And I went through it, and then you get to this point where you resent your career. You resent going out and doing showings. You resent sellers that don't want to reduce their price. And having an outlet, and specifically I found an outlet that takes my mind completely off of real estate, is so helpful. And it's improved me in real estate because now I'm so much more focused on real estate when I'm doing it. But B, you also just open up your worldview to so many other things depending on what that interest is. And the beauty of real estate is we can do that because we have flexible careers.
No, it's nice. And I don't play sports. I'm not in sports league. So yeah, this is my thing outside of real estate.
Yeah, that's awesome. The other thing is, I mean, sometimes these things can also lead to real estate in the sense, like if you're interested in some sports or you're interested in some sort of interest group within your city, it can. But I almost like it to have this separation where you don't actually operate with that real estate agent mindset. You're not looking for referrals. If they come, they come. But generally speaking, you're just going with the intention of separating yourself from real estate.
Yeah. Burnout is real. I was just getting lunch today with a relatively new agent within our brokerage. And she's like, how are you not burnt out all the time? And I said, I used to be 100%. But you got to know when to turn it off, because at the end of the day, that next client doesn't want the worst version of you. They want the best version. So you got to decide what times are best for you to do showings. Do you need that extra espresso shot? Like, you got to take care of you first, or your business is going to plummet.
Let's talk about that really quickly, because I know you've set some really good guidelines or guardrails in when it comes to working with clients. What have you set up basically, and how do you communicate that to a client?
Yeah, one of the biggest things I'm very clear about from the beginning is my working hours. So after having an initial conversation with a new client, I send a next steps email. This is how the process is going to work. And there's a section in that email, and the title is to set expectations. And I say, these are my working hours. For me, Sundays are off. I love Sundays. Now, I've worked a couple Sundays recently because I am going on a longer vacation, so I need to make up for it, but generally Sundays off. And then I say underneath, if we are submitting an offer, I will absolutely be available outside of these times, but basically you won't hear from me at this point. Clients are still going to text you. Clients are going to text you at 6 a.m. They're going to text you at 2 a.m. You're going to get it all the time. They're going to be calling you. I just don't answer. There's nothing we need to talk about at 10 o'clock tonight if we're not in an offer process right now.
Yeah.
I can wait. And I know if I answer that 10 p.m. call, and I've learned from experience, I will be snippy. I will be a little annoyed, and you will hear it in my voice, and that will deteriorate our relationship.
And you say that to a client as well?
Sometimes.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is because I think that's actually a reasonably like fair thing to say to
You
somebody,
don't want
right?
to talk to me at 10 p.m. Trust me.
The other side to this is you kind of also train the client in a sense, right? Like if you're picking up the phone at 10 p.m. all the time, they're going to expect that tomorrow they can do the same thing.
I've had clients before that have texted me, say at like 7 o'clock on a Friday or 6 a.m. and they just say, I know this is out of your working hours. Just answer when you can. I'm like, thank you. I respect that. I do use humor in a lot of ways. I've had multiple people say, oh, can we do that showing at 7 p.m. on a Friday or 7 p.m. on a Saturday? And I just joke back and I say, absolutely not. I say, I'm going to be out for dinner with my friends. I have a life. Like,
Yeah.
we'll do it Saturday afternoon.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And they just laugh.
Yeah, and people get it. Like most people,
No.
I find like there are tough people that we're all going to meet, but generally speaking, most people are pretty good people.
Those tough people and those people that don't respect that, I hand them off to another agent.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Maybe take a cut.
I know. I had to do that this week actually, and it's always
It's not worth
challenging.
it.
It's challenging to have that conversation, but how do you feel so free once you're through that? A couple more quick questions for you here, Jenelle, and then we'll wrap up. First off, I'd love to know your perspective since you've gone through being a new agent and had a lot of success initially. Let's say that you were to start your new business, Latin America, new city, everything. And someone said, "Okay, Jenelle, go and do it. Here's $1,000. Go and make as much money as you can." What would you do in order to grow your business?
I'd be out meeting people, 100%. First, if I'm moving to a new city, I got to get a friend group regardless. And if I'm operating as a real estate agent on my own, I mean, you're not meeting coworkers. So I would just start getting out, whether joining networking groups. Honestly, I'd start going on dates. I'd go meet people. You know what I mean? I would just I'd find a group of friends and then just get introduced to people. Yeah, I would just get out meeting people. Simple.
Totally. It's less sexy in many ways. We think like we have to build this like very strategic online marketing plan when it's like there is so many meetups and groups, which I know have been going on for years and years and it seems boring, but getting out there and just meeting people in these organizations is probably one of the best ways you're going to grow your business in a fast.
Also, as a real estate agent, you have to talk to people. Have a conversation with the person that's making your coffee this morning. Say hello to the concierge when you're in a building. Do you know how many times I've given my business card to concierges?
Yeah.
Of course. They thought I was nice. Why not?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's opportunities everywhere in this industry.
Everywhere.
And finally, what do you think agents that you see out there, what do you think agents should stop doing?
Watching what everyone else is doing.
Yeah. Like on social media, do you mean?
Everything. Right before I got on this call, I came across a TikTok and basically it was an agent that like screen recorded my video of me in it and then like posted it on hers. And I knew it was my video because I saw myself in the mirror when I did the recording. But then she did like a video at the beginning and just said, oh, like check out this property. And I was like, what? Anyways, I commented and I just said, isn't that me? And which is like a laugh face. Like, why? Like, make your own video content. Like, stop doing all the same stuff everyone else is doing. And then the other thing that they really need to stop doing is asking for advice from everyone else. If I asked an agent how to build a business right now, they may tell me, go start door knocking or start cold calling or send out mailers. I'm not going to do that. I think that strategy probably works for a lot of people, but that does not feel genuine to me. My best self is not going to be getting on the cold calls or door knocking. I'll be exhausted. So you have to find a strategy that works for you and genuinely just stick to it. If you are amazing at cold calling and getting on the phones and following up, my God, do it because it works. But if you're a bit more shy and prefer to do email marketing where you set up really nice drip campaigns, then do it. If you're great on video, start making video content.
Yeah, so more so go towards start building the business that you want to build. And I totally agree with you. I think that you have to understand that there's a million ways to grow in this business. And I know we've all heard that all sorts of different times in all sorts of different ways, but there's a reason for it. It's because it's true. And seeing people do things that they absolutely hate, if door knocking is going to drive you absolutely bonkers, and even if you get one lead every 6 months, every 3 months from doing that, but at the end of the day, you feel like you just want to curl up into a ball, is it really worth it? There's a lot of other things you can be doing with your time ultimately.
It's a tough business. I think another thing agents need to stop doing is sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one for sure. For sure. We kind of expect that's how I started my business was I got my license, said, "Oh, I'm just gonna wait for the phone to ring," and I was out of the industry in 8 months. It was just
Yeah.
like that, of course, doesn't happen.
No,
Yeah.
it's not easy business.
Janelle, thank you so much for coming on. This has been wonderful. So if people wanted to reach out to you, what are the best ways to connect with you?
Message me on Instagram. Honestly, my Instagram is Jenelle_Tremblett. And if you ever want to book a call with me, I'll just send you a direct link there.
We'll put that in the show notes. And then as well, please check out Janelle's podcast because it's absolutely fantastic. And there's so many learnings, but it's also so great to hear people's triumphs and then also what they had to do to get there. And that's really what the podcast to me is really about. And it's fantastic.
And there's lots of solo episodes if you ever want to learn anything about me.
Yeah, that's true. Awesome, Janelle. Thank you so much.
Thank you.